I'm delighted that the Diamond Fund for Choristers plays a part in this, and I wish all the young choristers who will be working hard this festive season.
Imagine living a quiet life, one where you chased your dreams and expected nothing extraordinary. But then, like a dream, your whole life turned upside down in the best possible way, pulling you into the spotlight you had always dreamed of, but never thought would happen. That was exactly what happened to Birgitte Eva van Deurs Henriksen. She was never supposed to be part of the British royal family, but somehow she became the Duchess of Gloucester. But how did this happen? Join us as we uncover the true story of how an ordinary Danish girl became the Duchess of Gloucester, the unexpected Duchess of Gloucester. Birgitte Eva van Deurs Henriksen was born on June 20, 1946, to Asger Preben Vissing Henriksen, a lawyer, and his wife, Vivian van Deurs. As a young girl, Birgitte had dreams of her own, though she never imagined becoming part of Britain's royal family. While most royals, like Camilla, had their lives shaped within aristocratic circles, Birgitte's path was very different. She began life more than 1,000 kilometers away from Buckingham Palace, and her parents were Danish commoners who didn't live in England. So how did Birgitte Eva van Deurs Henriksen find herself among the crown's inner circle? Keep watching to find out. Birgitte grew up in the city of Odense, Denmark, where she completed her early schooling before attending a Swiss finishing school. She later studied at the Scandinavian Academy of International Fashion and Design in Copenhagen, before moving on to Cambridge University. Her family lived comfortably, well connected within Danish society, yet far from British royal circles. However, her parents divorced in the 1960s, and Birgitte chose to adopt her mother's ancestral surname, van Deurs. During this time, she decided to continue her education in Cambridge, unaware that her move to the United Kingdom would eventually change her destiny. While studying there, Birgitte met Prince Richard, grandson of King George V and cousin of Queen Elizabeth, who was also studying architecture at the university. They quickly became friends, often sharing ideas. However, when Birgitte completed her studies, she returned to Denmark and didn't see Richard again. By 1971, she decided to return to the United Kingdom after securing a job as a secretary at the Royal Danish Embassy in London. Interestingly, her path crossed once again with Prince Richard. This time, their bond deepened as they began to enjoy each other's company more frequently. At that time, the media paid little attention to Prince Richard. As the second son of the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, he was not expected to inherit his parents' title. This was likely why they paid less attention to them. In less than a year after their reunion, in February 1972, Prince Richard asked Birgitte to marry him, and she accepted happily. The news quickly spread as the media focused its attention on them. For the first time, many saw the Danish woman who was going to become part of the British royal family, but not everyone was thrilled about it. Many people were surprised that Prince Richard chose someone outside the upper class. They expected him to marry a lady from noble birth, not a Danish commoner. The New York Times ran the headline, "Queen's cousin will wed a secretary." It reflected the quiet disapproval and class prejudice surrounding their union. Yet Richard remained unbothered. He was deeply in love with Birgitte, and his parents, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, were equally delighted by the match. They admired her character and accepted her wholeheartedly. Richard and Birgitte's wedding took place a year later, on the 8th of July, 1973, at St. Andrew's Church in Barnwell, Northamptonshire. Birgitte's gown was designed by Sir Norman Hartnell, one of Britain's most distinguished royal designers. Hartnell had created bridal and ceremonial gowns for many members of the royal family, including Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and Queen Elizabeth II herself. The wedding day was her true entrance into the royal world. Yet, unlike other royal brides who borrowed diamond tiaras from the Queen's vault, Birgitte didn't wear any. She chose something else: flowers. Her veil was held in place by tiny white stephanotis. Flowers tucked into her hair. People wondered why she went against tradition, but it was later revealed that the flowers carried a symbolic meaning from her Danish and Greek heritage. The bloom represented a crown and the traditional emblem of marital happiness. After the wedding, Birgitte received her new title, Her Royal Highness Princess Richard of Gloucester. The couple moved into their family home at Barnwell Manor, beginning their married life quietly. But just as the family was settling into a new rhythm, tragedy struck, one that would change everything about their future. The tragedy that shook the Gloucesters. Prince Richard and Birgitte had barely been married 6 weeks when shocking news reached them that Prince Richard's elder brother, Prince William of Gloucester, had died. The news stunned the entire royal family and the public. It was a tragedy that sent shockwaves through the nation. But what led to his death? Well, you'll be shocked. Prince William, the first son of Prince Henry, Duke of Gloucester, was born on the 18th of October 1941. His father was away on military service at the time, prompting King George VI to assure William's mother that should anything happen to her husband, he would act as guardian to the young prince. Fortunately, Prince Henry returned safely, and William grew up with his parents. William spent his early childhood at Barnwell Manor in Northamptonshire, and later in Canberra, Australia, while his father served as Governor-General from 1945 to 1947. He studied history at Magdalene College, Cambridge, then went to Stanford University in California, where he focused on political science and international affairs. When he returned to Britain, he joined the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and was posted to Lagos as Third Secretary at the British High Commission, and later promoted to Second Secretary. He was known for being hard-working and friendly, but when his father fell ill, William resigned from the post and returned home to manage the family estate. William also began performing royal duties, standing in for the Queen as Counselor of State during her travels. Everything seemed in place for his future, but that future ended suddenly when he decided to fly one of his planes in an air race that summer. Prince William was no newbie to flying planes. He was a licensed pilot and the president of the British Light Aviation Centre, owning several airplanes as well. However, on 28th of August 1972, William, who was known for his adventurous and sometimes reckless nature, went on another daring journey by competing in the Goodyear International Air Trophy at Halfpenny Green near Wolverhampton. Virel Mitchell, a pilot, whom William often raced with, was his passenger. But something unexpected happened before they took off. Shortly before the race started, the wind direction suddenly changed, and a different takeoff runway was brought into use. This required all race participants to turn left as soon as possible after takeoff to join the planned race circuit. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. The plane struggled to maintain height, dropped sharply to the ground, and burst into flames. William and his pilot Mitchell died instantly, and the fire took more than 2 hours to control. After Prince William of Gloucester's death, his mother could not bring herself to inform his father of the tragedy, as he was very sick at the time, and she feared that the shock might worsen his condition. Prince Henry later found out through the news of his son's death, and the shock left him heartbroken. William was buried in the royal burial ground at Frogmore. The comprehensive school in Oundle, which he had opened earlier, was renamed Prince William School in his honor. During his lifetime, William had been the heir apparent to his father's titles, Duke of Gloucester, Earl of Ulster, and Baron Culloden. However, his death immediately turned the hands of succession, and Prince Richard of Gloucester became the new heir apparent. Death had brought this unexpected opportunity to Richard and his Danish bride, Birgitte. Birgitte was as shocked as her husband. Neither of them had ever imagined in their wildest dreams that they would inherit the title as Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. They had never believed William would die so soon, but no one could predict fate. Prince Richard and Birgitte had to adjust their lives to their new responsibility. Before this, they had focused on building their professional careers outside the royal family and living a quiet, normal life before suddenly becoming the apparent heirs. Within a year of William's death, his father died, and Richard and Birgitte immediately ascended to their new titles. Birgitte was just 27 when she had unexpectedly become the Duchess of Gloucester. No one expected her to rise to this position, but destiny had chosen her. Birgitte took her responsibilities to heart and immediately began fulfilling her royal duties. Some of the things she did included supporting numerous charities and continuing in Princess Diana's footsteps by becoming a patron of the Royal Academy of Music. She also represented Queen Elizabeth II on several occasions, and her dedication was soon noticed by the Queen. The Queen recognized the Duchess of Gloucester as a talented diplomat and granted her the sponsorship of 2 naval ships, HMS Gloucester and HMS Sandown, sending her to represent the crown in various countries, including Norway, New Zealand, and China. The Duchess of Gloucester, however, has been far from the spotlight despite all her commitment to the crown. Unlike most royals who often take the spotlight, she is less recognized and sometimes overlooked by the public. Yet, the Duchess of Gloucester remains one of the quiet forces who have helped keep the monarchy steady and respected. She has always worked hard to prove that she was deserving of the royal position she received, even though she gained it by accident. While many pay little attention to her, this could be because of her reserved personality and preference for privacy. Still, the Duchess of Gloucester has never slowed down in proving that she is more than ready and available to serve the crown. There have been rumors that the Prince of Wales, Prince William, also recognizes Birgitte's hard work and plans to include her in his inner circle when he becomes King of England. This is because of her humility, sense of duty, and her quiet desire to work not for fame, but for the success of the monarchy. While Birgitte Eva van Deurs Henriksen was never meant to be royal, fate turned the clock in her favor, and today she stands as the Duchess of Gloucester. But Birgitte is not the only royal who found herself in a position she never imagined she would hold. Let us look at another royal whose unexpected rise changed the course of history. The unexpected King of England. Queen Elizabeth, King Charles, and Prince William would never have been the current heirs to the throne or the ruling family of England if not for one unexpected decision that changed everything. Elizabeth's father, King George VI, was never supposed to be king. He was the second son of the Duke and Duchess of York. His older brother, Edward Albert Christian, George Andrew, Patrick David, later known as King Edward VIII, was expected to ascend the throne as the eldest son of King George V and Queen Mary. But a bombshell happened that altered the entire royal line. As a young man, Edward was already being prepared for the throne after his father became king. However, he was not the traditional kind of royal. He was a man more focused on his image than on duty. His charm, charisma, and modern fashion sense made him one of the most admired figures of his time. The media adored him, as he presented a refreshing image to the public compared to the formal and distant face the monarchy usually showed. Edward served in the British Army during World War I, but after the war he became a different man, one less driven by responsibility and more captivated by personal freedom and emotion. Edward became restless. He always wanted something exciting to do, and soon began keeping company with people who didn't fit the standards of the royal family. He was often seen with married women, flirting, partying, and drinking as he pleased. King George wasn't happy about his son's lifestyle and complained many times, but all his warnings fell on deaf ears. Edward had made up his mind to live as he wished. Worse still was Edward's habit of dating married women. He soon found himself involved with the wrong woman, who almost ruined his life, Marguerite Alibert. Edward was said to be infatuated with her, but that affair turned dark when Marguerite later shot her husband. The incident caused panic in the palace and nearly stained the royal family's name. However, they quietly worked behind the scenes to keep Edward's name out of her murder trial. It was a scandal the royals could not afford, especially for a future king. One would think Edward would have learned from the mistake, but instead, he became worse. He kept moving from one married woman to another. People in high positions feared what would happen when he became king. Even King George was scared, and once told his advisors that Edward would bring ruin upon himself within a year after taking the throne. It was as though King George could see the future. But that wasn't all. King George also wished that his second son, Prince Albert, might one day succeed instead, since Edward showed no interest in marriage or in steady conduct. Despite his recklessness, Edward was friendly and charming. He and his brother remained close, and he often jokingly called Albert's wife, Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, as though he sensed her destiny was already written. In 1930, King George gave Edward a secluded residence in Windsor Great Park to live alone and carry out his duties, as he was not yet married. Edward used his new residence for parties and continued his odd lifestyle of indulgence with women. It was during one of these gatherings that he met Wallace Simpson, the woman who would change the fate of the monarchy. Wallace Simpson was an American woman married to her second husband. Her first husband, Win Spencer, was a U.S. naval officer whom she had divorced. From the moment Edward met her, he was drawn to her. They began a relationship almost immediately, and soon their closeness became the subject of whispers. Many newspapers outside Britain wrote about their affair, but no British paper dared to publish it. King George suspected his son's involvement with Wallace, but Edward denied it, insisting she was just a friend. Eventually, the truth reached the king, and he ordered Edward to end the relationship, but he refused. He even brought Wallace to the palace to introduce her to his father, but King George declined to meet her. It was rumored that Wallace had Edward completely under her control, influencing his every move. Although no one spoke about it publicly, everyone feared for Britain's future. The idea of an American divorcee holding such power over the heir to the throne alarmed both the royal household and the government. Their fears soon became reality when King George V died on January 20th, 1936. Edward, though unmarried, ascended the throne as King Edward VIII, and the drama began almost immediately. The very next day after his accession, he appeared with Wallace Simpson at the window of St. James's Palace, watching the proclamation of his reign from above, a direct defiance of royal tradition, as the sovereign was not expected to appear publicly in such a manner. But he didn't stop there. Edward also broke another long-standing custom by ordering that his coin portrait face the same direction as his father's, rather than the opposite, simply because he wanted to show his hair parting. These gestures, though small, revealed his disregard for royal convention. Within months of taking the throne, Edward got everyone talking as he continued to act just as he pleased. He appeared publicly with Wallace Simpson, who was still legally married to her second husband, and he began commenting on political matters in public, which a monarch was never expected to do. Government officials held secret meetings to discuss how to handle Edward's conduct, but since he was the king, they had limited power. They quietly began withholding confidential state documents, fearing he might share them with Wallace or her guests. While Edward continued with his reckless behavior, he did something worse that got everyone talking. A few months into his reign, Edward announced his intention to marry Wallace Simpson. The news sent shockwaves through Britain and across the Commonwealth. No one had imagined that the king would openly seek to marry a woman who had been divorced once and was in the process of divorcing her second husband. The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, along with the Dominion governments, strongly opposed the marriage. They declared that a divorced woman with two living ex-husbands was politically and socially unfit to become queen consort. The Church of England also stood firmly against Edward's decision to marry divorcee Wallace, as Edward was the titular head of the Church of England, which at the time disapproved of remarriage after divorce if a former spouse was still alive. They asked that Edward step down from the throne if he wanted to marry Wallace Simpson. However, he was reluctant to step down and came up with a suggestion that if he married Wallace Simpson, he would remain king, but Simpson would not take the title of queen consort, and that their children would not inherit the throne. Many people in the church and senior politicians, including Winston Churchill, agreed with this idea, but it was rejected by other government officials, like the British cabinet and the Dominion governments. They were not ready to change the rules or traditions of the monarchy because of Edward. They feared what else he would change if they agreed to it. Frustrated by the lack of support, Edward realized his position had become impossible. He knew that if he defied his ministers and married Wallace, the government would collapse in protest. After several tense private meetings, he told Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin that he would abdicate if his marriage could not be accepted. Baldwin, understanding the gravity of the situation, warned him that he must choose between three paths: marry against ministerial advice and cause a constitutional crisis, abandon the idea of marrying Wallace altogether, or abdicate the throne. Edward's love for Wallace Simpson was stronger than his love for the throne, so he abdicated and signed the instrument of abdication, declaring that none of his descendants would ever ascend the throne. Edward's reign remains the shortest of any British monarch to date, lasting only 326 days. He went on to marry Wallace after she finalized her divorce. Interestingly, while many expected that Wallace and Edward would eventually part ways, that never happened. They spent their remaining years together until Edward died at the age of 77 in 1972. However, Edward's abdication changed everything for the royal family. It made his younger brother, Prince Albert, Duke of York, Elizabeth's father, the next in line to be king. Like the Duchess of Gloucester, Albert never thought he would be king, as he had always believed his elder brother's position was secure. But when Edward abdicated the throne, Prince Albert ascended the throne and took the regnal name George VI in honor of their father, King George V. Elizabeth and her sister Margaret's lives changed instantly. Elizabeth became heir to the throne as her father had no son. However, Queen Elizabeth's life might have been an ordinary one with Prince Philip if her uncle, Prince Edward, had not abdicated for the woman he loved. But he did, and that decision set the path that eventually made Elizabeth the Queen of England. When Elizabeth's father, King George VI, died, Elizabeth took the throne at age 25. She ruled for over 70 years, making her the longest-serving monarch in the history of Britain until she passed away in 2022. After her death, the crown went to her son, King Charles III, and from him it is expected to go to Prince William and later to Prince George. But no one can ever tell what the future holds. Maybe, just like before, something unexpected might happen again that would bring another turn in the story of the royal family. What do you think of the Duchess of Gloucester story? Why do you think she's less famous than other royals? Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You'll enjoy it.